Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. It's Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 1st of May 2024. This is a military aid video, military aid and military equipment. Let's get to the beginning. We're going to start with Norway allocating over $600 million for Ukrainian air defense ammunition. Or air defense and ammunition. New funds will primarily support military aid to Ukraine, with a smaller portion allocated to civilian financial aid, according to Norway's Prime Minister. That's absolutely fantastic. Norway, the Nordics in general, and the Baltics really coming up with the goods so often. Latvia has approved a new military aid package for Ukraine, which is set to include Rheinmetall's Mantis NBS CRAM systems. These send up an awful lot of lead into the sky. Good for air defense there, of course. Now, I've been trying to find out what the difference is between the Mantis NBS CRAM system and the Skynex. Let's go into that in a second. Anyway, tactical unmanned surveillance systems, as well as other essential material and technical assets. According to the Latvian Prime Minister, Latvia annually allocates 0.25% of its GDP to the military support of Ukraine. Okay, so the Mantis system looks, as you saw there, like this. Mantis air defense system is the modular, automatic and network-capable targeting and interception system, formerly titled NBS CRAM. It's a very short-range air defense protection system of the German Air Force, intended for base protection. It's produced by Rheinmetall, a subsidiary of Rheinmetall Defense. So on and so forth. Right. The Mantis system is intended to detect, track, and shoot down incoming projectiles before they can reach their target within very close range. The system itself is based on Oerlikon Contraves' Sky Shield air defense gun system. A Mantis system consists of 6 35mm automatic guns capable of firing 1,000 rounds per minute, a ground control unit and 2 sensor units. The guns fire programmable ahead ammunition developed by Rheinmetall Weapons and Munitions. The ammunition carries a payload of 152 tungsten projectiles weighing 3.3 grams each. So the Mantis radar can acquire a target within 2 seconds, then engage it with one of the guns firing at a 36 round burst. 2 guns directed by one radar each can engage multiple targets. After being manually activated, the system operates fully automatically. Okay, so this is just firing immense amounts of stuff into the air to take down, this is kind of how CRAM works, to take down incoming projectiles. Now, that's the Mantis air defense system. Then you have this, which is Sky Shield, is an air defense system, a modular, lightweight, short-range air defense or SHORAD system developed by Swiss corporation Oerlikon Contraves, now subsidiary of Rheinmetall. The successor to Skyguard defense system, Sky Shield, is intended to rapidly acquire and destroy threatening aircraft and missiles, as well as fulfill a CRAM role. So I think this is broadly the same thing, but this is as it was in the previous designed by the company Oerlikon Contraves, that's now part of Rheinmetall. On December 2022, a German government spokesman said that Rheinmetall would provide 2 Skynex systems to Ukraine as part of assistance during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, valued at approximately 182 million euros. Germany would pay for the cost involved. The Skynex air defense system is based on the concept that keeps airspace surveillance separate from the effectors, only requiring a tracking unit to link a C2 network with different weapons. Each Skynex system comprises 4 revolver gun Mark III cannons, a CN1 control node, and an XTAR 3D radar, all mounted on HX trucks. Planned for delivery at the beginning of 2024. The delivery of the first was announced on the 4th of January 2024. So trying to work out whether this Mantis is indeed basically the Skynex or elements thereof. If anyone could give me some clue on that, that'd be great. I'll probably have to reach out to German Aid to Ukraine there on that one. It certainly looks like at least part of that. It does look pretty much like that is Skynex. Ukraine allocates additional $392 million to purchase 300,000 drones, with a total drone spending now at $1 billion. In the first 2 months of 2024, Ukraine produced 200,000 FPV drones and aims to manufacture 1 million drones in 2024 to make up for the artillery shell shortages. If that's true, then that's why we are possibly seeing the statistics that Daniela from Tochny and Andrew Perpetu's crew has accumulated and presented. We are seeing that reflected on the battlefield, which is that the Ukrainians are using or having more success with their FPV drones. They just possibly have far more of them, or at least more of them than the Russians. It's difficult to know. Russians have made claims about how many they produce, but I don't think I'd be surprised if they are getting, what was it? First 2 months getting 200,000 drones. That's 100,000 a month. That's absolutely insane numbers. Now, the Russians had claimed they're producing 300,000 a month. I just have not seen that reflected in the statistics at all, so I think that's highly unlikely. The Back and Alive Foundation has provided Ukrainian Special Forces with 26 120mm mortars, which will enhance their fire capability on the front line. All this became possible thanks to donations. So this is incredible that Ukraine has the ability to procure equipment with donations from I presume general public or other entities. Quite incredible. And as I always say, when this happens with Ukraine, is there a parallel in Russia here? Is there a Russian entity that has got together 26 120mm mortars? Is there an asymmetry in assistance that Ukraine is getting through these sort of charitable projects? Right, Ukraine's Steel Hornets show their new incendiary ammunition. They are intended for dropping from a height of up to 30 meters and are capable of burning through sheet steel of 8mm. The ammunition is a line from 750 grams to 2,500 grams, so under a kilogram to 2.5 kilogram, and it can burn with sort of, magnesium burning through metal there or something. Anyway, you get the idea. What you'd want to make sure
Квадрат 2,5
is that when you drop, so you're saying, 8mm steel, that is, when you drop this from a height, you don't want it bouncing off. You want it to somehow stick to the metal. So I don't know how they do that, nonetheless, or you drop it through the hatches. But this will obviously cause all sorts of problems for anything it kind of falls on as it burns. Okay, Ukrainian unmanned robot with an integrated Javelin is armed with an Omega NSU. So now we're seeing UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles, having the capabilities of firing anti-tank guided missiles. So that could be something to look out for going forward. Obviously, these are all in test phases. The White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has confirmed that US military aid is reaching Ukraine with limited public details due to operational security, aiming to bolster Ukraine's defensive capabilities against Russia's aggression. So there is stuff getting through. We know they're already firing ATACMS. I've just seen a video of 3, possibly 4 ATACMS. One was a dud, cluster munitions hitting a training facility in Luhansk Oblast. Anyway, Colby Badwire here says, in our House Armed Services Committee hearing, Congressman Wilson, Republican from, I presume that's South Carolina 2nd District, tells Secretary of Defense Austin and Chairman Brown that the US should provide Ukraine with AGM-158 JASM air-launched cruise missiles for their F-16s. This is something that's been talked about quite a bit. I talked about this with Colby Badwire the other day, about whether the JASMs, the cruise missiles, basically think Storm Shadow but American version, whether the F-16s will be equipped with them. I believe this may be the first time a member of Congress has publicly made the call. That's not all that he said. So he also talked about transferring more cluster munitions to Ukraine. Quote, "We have surpluses that need to be destroyed. I know a way to destroy them, and that is to send them to the people of Ukraine." Absolutely 100% with that, and I love it. I love this guy in Congress wearing Ukrainian ribbons on his lapel, and as a Republican, that is really good news. Okay, John Ridge says concerning the GLSDB. So the idea that GLSDB has been less than brilliant in its reception. There appears to be some jamming issues with them. We've then heard that Boeing have got together with Saab, I presume, to sort out a bit of a software fix to that, but then they're saying there also needs to be better preparation from the Ukrainians to make sure that they're being used in the correct places, or with a mitigation of electronic warfare aside from the use of these. Then I think this is interesting. So, okay, Comrade Muzika here says, the Kiev-based Center for Defense Strategies think tank reported 2 days ago that Ukrainian defense forces ceased this deployment of GIMLRS on the battlefield due to GPS signal suppression by the enemy. I'm not sure whether the cessation is complete, but Russians significantly improved their ability to grade the effectiveness of GPS-based munitions delivered by Ukraine's Western partners. And that was the kind of talking about there. But then John Rich says, almost certainly a misstatement. They are presumably referring to GLSDB rather than GIMLRS. Right? If GIMLRS were rendered completely ineffective by Russian GPS denial, we would not have provided additional rounds in the most recent PDA package. So just to clear up, if anyone had thought from what had been said that GIMLRS had been, as in HIMARS, rockets sent out from guided multiple launch rocket systems, in general, they wouldn't have got loads more in the package. I would like to know whether they are continuing to receive GLSDB. Have they put that on hold until it gets improved? If they're still receiving GLSDB, then the understanding would be that GLSDB aren't as compromised as some people might think. Staying on America, there's been a massive article in Time with an interview. It's by Eric Cortellessa. He's been with, I believe, Trump over a few days and has written a huge old article on Trump, which I think is absolutely fascinating and a little worrying, personally. I mean, you're talking about like an autocrat coming into power if he gets in November 2024 by his own words. I've highlighted lots to go through, but for this video, I'm only going to go through that which is relevant to aid to Ukraine in terms of military assistance. So we go down, and by the way, the one worrying thing about inside Trump's world, so the former president has a more disciplined operation preparing to put his vision into action. When you look at his policy advisors, look at this chap here, Tom Homan here. Tom Homan is Trump's former acting ICE director. He's a fellow at the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation, which is the think tank behind Project 2025, which is a blueprint for a Trump presidency. The Heritage Foundation are compromised by Russia. So they get their money from Russia through Viktor Orban's Hungary and a couple of, like the Bethany Foundation, another foundation in Hungary, which get their money from the propaganda arm of Viktor Orban's autocratic government. And they then, Heritage Foundation, are involved in creating the entire policy blueprint for Trump's presidency. If you don't realize how compromised Trump is by Russian money and Russian influence, then you need to get your head sorted, because one of his main advisors is working for an organization. The Heritage Foundation used to be fairly aligned to, say, the American Enterprise Institute, as these kind of small government, right-wing, faux libertarian kind of pro-business think tanks, right? And then the AEI has gone massively anti-Russia, as well it should do, looking after American interests, whereas the Heritage Foundation has gone massively anti-Ukraine and pro-Russia, and is massively compromised because of its funding, and is also quite closely involved with Tucker Carlson, whose father sits on the lobbying, sits on the board for the lobbying company who lobbies for Viktor Orban. And there's loads of connections between CPAC, the Heritage Foundation, Trump, Tucker Carlson, and then Trump's 2025 Project 2025 blueprint coming from the Heritage Foundation. It is just, there is pro-Russian thinking going on there, and it is deeply, deeply worrying. I'd also worry that Steve Bannon's got anything to do with anyone, and also Stephen Miller. I think these three people for me are just, and Jason Miller actually. Anyway. So Trump's intention to remake America's relations abroad may be just as consequential. Since its founding, the US has sought to build and sustain alliances based on shared values of political and economic freedom. Trump takes a much more transactional approach, I've talked about that a lot previously, to international relations than his predecessors, expressing disdain for what he views as free-riding friends and appreciation for authoritarian leaders like President Xi Jinping of China, Prime Minister Viktor Orban of Hungary, and former President Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil. That's one reason America's traditional allies were horrified when Trump recently said at a campaign rally that Russia could, quote, do whatever the hell they want to a NATO country he believes doesn't spend enough on collective defense. That wasn't idle bluster. Trump tells me, quote, if you're not going to pay, you are on your own, he says. Trump has long said the alliance is ripping the US off. Former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg credited Trump's first-term threat to pull out of the alliance with spurring other members to add more than $100 billion to their own defense budgets. I think that has actually a lot more to do with Ukraine being invaded than what Trump said, although Trump was right in saying that members aren't doing enough on defense, right? So he got that right. But he's completely wrong now in saying that they aren't paying. If you're not going to pay, they are paying, and they are now paying more for Ukrainian defense than the US. Even given the US's $60 billion defense package, you can argue that most of that is actually not going to Ukraine. We talked about that with Colby Badwa. There's different ways of slicing and dicing those stats. It'd be interesting to see what Kiel Institute, how they take that $60 billion and translate that into their stats. Anyway, I showed you previously that on up to February, the US was arguably $100 billion behind Europe. If you include the EU and UK and Norway, for example, they are $100 billion behind Europe. So add that 60 billion. If you take that $60 billion, there's still $40 billion behind Europe. So Trump is empirically, factually incorrect with his claims, and he needs to be called out on it, and someone needs to do that because he keeps saying it, and he says it again here. So, but an insecure NATO is likely to accrue to Russia's benefit as it is to America's. President Putin's 2022 invasion of Ukraine looks to many in Europe and the US like a test of his broader vision to reconstruct the Soviet Empire. Under Biden and a bipartisan Congress, the US has sent more than $100 billion to Ukraine to defend itself. It's unlikely Trump would extend the same support to Kiev. After Orban visited Mar-a-Lago in March, he said Trump, quote, wouldn't give a penny to Ukraine. And I think Orban was doing this spokesperson job for Trump. But then, quote, I wouldn't give unless Europe starts equalizing, Trump hedges in our interviews. So this is what he's just said. I wouldn't give unless Europe starts equalizing. They've not only started equalizing, they have spent more than the US on Ukraine. And their GDP is less than the US. So on two metrics, the US is behind. Now, I'm not having a go at the US or anything. I'm having a go at Trump for getting his facts wrong and using that falsely as justification for no aid to Ukraine. Quote from Trump, if Europe is not going to pay, they are. Why should we pay? They're much more greatly affected. I don't think he understands geopolitics. We have an ocean between us. It's not just about geography. You absolute muppet. They don't. No, we don't have. Yes, they are geographically closer. Yes, that is more worrying from an immediacy point of view. But you're talking about global hegemony and a hierarchy at which the US is at the top. Then you only maintain that if you invest in the world. So it frustrates the heck out of me, this kind of, it's just, he is deeply ignorant about geopolitics, Trump. And it's what many people have said. Many people in his own administration, last time, 40 out of the 44 people who worked around him are not endorsing him for president. What does that tell you? So you have this situation where people have overtly said he doesn't know enough about geopolitics and here it's clear to me that's the case with what he's saying. Trump has been historically reluctant to criticize or confront Putin. He sided with the Russian autocrat over his intelligence community when it asserted that Russia interfered in the 2016 election. I think that Helsinki press conference was the low point of his international diplomacy. Even now, Trump uses Putin as a foil for his own political purposes. When I asked Trump why he has not called for the release of Wall Street Journal reporter Ivan Gershkovich, who has been unjustly held on spurious charges in a Moscow prison for a year, Trump says, quote, I guess because I have so many other things I'm working on. end quote. Gershkovich should be freed, he adds, but he doubts it will happen before the election. Quote, the reporter should be released, and he will be released, Trump tells me. I don't know if he's going to be released under Biden. I would get him released. Of course, I mean, yeah, I can say, and I will fly to the moon. Saying things like that doesn't just magically make them happen or likely. You need to give a plan of how you're going to do that. It goes on to talk about Taiwan and Asia, South Korea pulling out of South Korea unless they spend more money. And transactional isolationism may be the main strain of Trump's foreign policy, but there are limits. Trump says he would join Israel's side in a confrontation with Iran. So it's really interesting. It's just prioritizing Israel over everything else. But Ukraine are on their own, South Korea will be on their own, Taiwan will be on their own, unless, I don't know. It's all really problematic. Like, if you are still someone that genuinely thinks that Trump's going to be good for Ukraine, I don't know that I can help you there, really. So be it. Israeli Air Force announced today that within the next 2 months, their aging US-provided MIM-104 Patriot PAC-2, so these aren't PAC-3s, so they'll struggle against certain ballistic missiles. PAC-2 GEM plus surface-to-air missile batteries operated by the 138th Air Defence Battalion will be mothballed and replaced by a combination of the Iron Dome and short-range engagements and David Sling for medium-range engagements. It is currently unknown that what will become of the roughly 6 Patriot batteries that are operated by Israel, but it has been suggested that they be sold or donated to Ukraine. Yes. Even though they're PAC-2, I don't know whether PAC-2 can... whether you can make differences in the missiles that they send, or someone with a lot more knowledge than me can cast their opinion. In a new update, the UK government has confirmed, this is really good news, by the way, that the MOD has delivered 50 AS-90 155mm self-propelled howitzers to Ukraine. Now, originally, I was under the impression that we had given 33. So this is to say that we've actually given a further 17 AS-90 self-propelled howitzers that have been quite well received by Ukraine. Britain's now supplied roughly 2/3 of its AS-90 fleet. Now, we are phasing that out, it seems, in preference for the RCH 155 that's going to be built between UK and Germany. So you might just see the potential for all of our AS-90s to go. I don't know whether we'll keep them for general training, but I don't know why you train on the AS-90 to then go and use the RCH 155. So if it's going to be phased out, let's get that, as many of them as possible, to Ukraine. And talking about self-propelled guns, quote, first delivery of what T-155 self-propelled howitzers, 12 units of the Gen 2 variety will be made shortly to Ukraine. These are Turkish SPGs that can fire 40 plus kilometers. They've got a speed of 65 kilometers an hour. Vulcan firing system, and in Syria, Iraq and Karabakh, they are battle proven. Delivery problems have been solved by the US. So good news that they'll get 12 decent self-propelled guns from Turkey as well. We've gone into that. It's in the wrong place. Right. The Canadian Armed Forces are teaching Ukrainian soldiers to detect and clear explosives. Quote, we are teaching Ukrainian soldiers to detect and neutralize enemy explosives in the safest way possible, according to the Canadian Unifier training mission. Good stuff, Canada. Now, the first F-16s will appear in Ukraine after Easter, spokesman of the Air Force's Yevlash says. Of course, that's suitably vague. After Easter can entail from Easter until the end of the universe. So, it might be that just before the heat death of the universe, there might be some F-16s getting to Ukraine. I presume he implies that they're going to be shortly after Easter, which is good because that's the earlier end of the range that we are expecting them. Now that footage has been released by NATO of Ukrainian Air Force pilots undergoing F-16 training on Danish soil. Seen here, the Ukrainian F-16 pilot call sign Moonfish, working with an RDAF, so Danish Air Force F-16BM ET-022 from ESC 730, whatever all that means. So lots of nice footage of F-16s and Ukrainian pilots and planes with your big engines doing plainy stuff. So that's awesome. Let's get them out there ASAP, although it's all about securing them when they're not in flight. The French ambassador to Ukraine has handed over 13 equipped vehicles to the national police, transferred the vehicles as part of the strengthening of the fight against domestic and gender violence on the territory. So that is really good. Thank you, France. They look like Mazdas. Happy days. Police cars. EU should make a decision on the transfer of men of draft age to Ukraine, according to the Minister of National Defence of Poland. So you have one Baltic nation saying we will support Ukraine in whatever they want, however they want it, as yet to be defined, in helping draft age men get back to Ukraine. And then you've had another Baltic nation saying, no, we won't help. Then you've got Poland saying, we'll wait to see what Ukraine wants, but also this needs to come from the EU. So this is what he's saying. EU should make a decision. We talked about it today at the Council of Ministers. We said that it should be a decision at the European level, and I know that negotiations between Kyiv and Brussels on this topic are ongoing, so it's something, to watch out for. It is a huge challenge mobilization for Ukraine. It's still far from being sorted, and it needs to be sorted toot sweet. New York businessman has pleaded guilty to attempting to sell drone parts to Russia despite sanctions. It's good news that there are there's enforcement of these sanctions. A New York businessman has pleaded guilty to attempting to sell more than $250,000 worth of sensitive dual-use goods to sanctioned Russian entities. The U.S. Justice Department's Office of Public Affairs has said on April the 30th. Nikolai Grigoriev, a 36-year-old Brooklyn resident, pleaded guilty to shipping components to companies affiliated with the Russian military. Co-defendants Nikita Arkhipov and Artem Olavianikov remain at large, the statement read. So, yeah, I guess former Russian citizens or people of Russian descent in the US might well be being monitored closely for activities such as this. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe and share. I need at least 24 cups of tea right now to assuage my pulsing head. Take care, y'all. I will speak to you later. Toodle pips.